Okay, thank you very much, Lars, and thanks for that very kind introduction. I think I'm very pleased to be associated with Roskilde and the Centre for Social Entrepreneurship, and I think the learning has been mutual, and with the other members of the Centre as well. As Lars said, I'm not going to talk about social entrepreneurship a lot, although innovation is, as we know, is closely allied to the topic of entrepreneurship. So I'm going to talk about innovation in higher education, and particularly focus on my UK university, the Open University, and what it's brought to the field of higher education in a number of different ways. So this is what I'm going to cover: types of innovation in higher education, looking a little bit back into history and some current trends, then focus on the Open University and its contribution. When I gave this this title, I kind of thought there's going to be lots of books I can refer to with nice graphs about the pattern of innovation, growth, and how, and so on and so forth. But I had some difficulty finding it, so I've had to come up with my own sort of themes of innovation. And we probably all have our different ideas about what are the key innovations in education and higher education. But this is my attempt to identify some major themes. So we begin with the monks in the monasteries and hopefully move out quickly to universities, the founding of universities, and then more recently, since the Second World War, more like the 60s, when Roskilde was founded, when my university was founded, when we moved into the era of mass higher education. We've also had an elaboration of curriculum. So I put the humanities, but in fact religion was one of the earliest subjects that was taught. And my own university in London was University College London, and that was in contrast to King's College, which is also a university in London. And King's was very much the religious university, and University College was known as the godless institution of Gower Street, and it had as its kind of heroic figure Jeremy Bentham, the philosopher, who as possibly as a way of kind of fingering his nose to the religious institution further down, didn't even get buried properly. He's left in his will that he wanted to be stuffed, and so he's stuffed, and he sits in a glass cage in the middle of the university with obviously a wax face, but such was the attempt to get away from the religious roots of curriculum that he took those steps. So we've moved from religion to humanities to science, technology, social science, more recently the growth of development of management, and professions. There's also an interesting boundary around what might be called the boundary between education and entertainment, edutainment, games, fun and learning. And we've used games quite a bit in our residential schools to try to make it more lively and interesting for people. But that's an interesting boundary. We've also seen the growth of professions, and so in my own university, law is one of the most popular sets of courses that we do, but we also education for the teaching profession and accountancy, other ones that we do. There's also been a big number of innovations around the teaching technologies. So we've moved from the undecipherable scrawlings of chalk on a blackboard to whiteboards, and then death by PowerPoint, which at least can be read, and to now a kind of a more reflective use of images and other ways of communicating, and interactive face-to-face teaching technologies where you can use a smart pen to link to a computer and do more interesting things on a whiteboard. And particularly in my own university, we've seen the growth of multimedia as a component of education, distance learning education, and computer-assisted learning. There's also, and Roskilde is exemplary in this area, innovations in pedagogy. Roskilde in the area of group and peer learning, project-based learning, and so on. But we also see other innovations in pedagogy. So I'm currently quite interested in some ideas around using non-professionals in education. And there's a very interesting example where Basaki barefoot teachers, these are typically young people in a village, will go and help in the school after only 2 weeks training. And it's been an incredibly effective strategy to complement ordinary professional teachers in the basic skills of numeracy and literacy. And we've also seen the role of volunteers and mentors. Indeed, we have a PhD student who's looking at the role of mentors in education in using a UK case study. Then we've seen the growth of, particularly with the advent of the Facebook generation, the link with informal and social learning, Facebook, Twitter, Delicious, which is a social bookmarking technology, Mendeley, which is similar. And this idea that, which we know in practice, that informal learning can be as important as the formal processes within a classroom. So people are thinking, how can we exploit the potential of Facebook and other social media to enhance learning possibilities? So in my university, we have a Social Learn project that has been going underway for about 18 months. And then we have the use of multiple platforms. So we're not just talking about books and classroom lectures. We're talking about the possibility of certain materials being on smartphones, using iPads and tablets. I noticed that in, I think, Abu Dhabi, there's one university where all the students get issued with an iPad. And that's a key part of their delivery of their learning materials. We also have, it's not so much necessarily an innovation, but education tends to be a highly regulated industry or service. And there's all kinds of reforms of public services which have also hit education in, for example, changes in the way schools and universities are governed. In my country, most universities are independent from the state. They're registered charities. There are 2 private universities. And we have this philosophy of new public management, which is coming into the universities, has been in the schools for many years, where we're seeing the adoption of business practices, business management practices, within what has been thought of as a public service. So those are some themes that I've identified as kind of my list of important areas of innovation. And linked to the last one, perhaps with a similar type of thinking to new public management, we have this philosophy that maybe we can apply a market philosophy to this area and think about new entrants in the market to reform the way in which it operates, the growth of private universities and corporate education, the McDonald's University, Microsoft, the University of Phoenix, which sort of cherry picks professional qualifications and is going global now. So they're picking on accountancy and business studies, commercial studies, where the prospects of employability are quite good, and so students are ready to pay and get those qualifications. In the UK, we also have this academic called Grayling. He has a new private college which charges quite a substantial fee, for more or less an elite education. Increasingly, we're also seeing a trend towards globalization. So my university has 200,000 students, and we operate in many different countries. But when we go and develop a partnership in India or Thailand, we find that already there are British universities there. There are consortia of universities delivering courses. I have a colleague in the area of my own subject of social enterprise, social entrepreneurship. He teaches regularly in Bangkok, solidly for 2 weeks, and that's part of a master's, joint master's in social enterprise, which they deliver. So globalization operates through partnerships. It also, brands become more important in the global marketplace. So obviously the MITs and the Stanfords and so on and so forth are important in the global development of educational markets. We also find, in terms of distance learning, I think we were not the first pioneers, but we were pioneering in the sense that we had a very high status distance learning initiative, which initially partnered with the BBC, so had, which was a well-known TV channel, and we had the field to ourselves for quite a number of years, and we now see everybody is using online materials as part of their provision with universities. So we used to have the field to ourselves. There's now a lot more competition, but we don't see generally in terms of an exclusive emphasis on online or distance learning. We see a kind of blended learning where distance learning materials, online materials, are combined with face-to-face sessions. So, for example, in our vocational masters, where the students come once a month, that kind of pattern is replicated in many other MBAs and of different types. For example, in the UK, where students will come for a weekend or a week, and the rest of the time they'll be online. They'll have distance learning materials, and so on. So that blended learning is a more typical model, and I think it's one that seems to fit with the modern demands of a workforce that's trying to upgrade its skills, where they don't have a lot of spare time. They don't want to take time off work, so they get a small amount of time, and then they give out their weekends and evenings. And that brings me to one of the most interesting recent innovations, the open source revolution. And here we see it in a number of different areas. So we see open source publishing in the academic field, which is changing the nature of journal publications. We see our universities having open source repositories of our papers. But this also opens up the possibility for these resources to be used more widely in education. So we don't necessarily have to subscribe to journals, because very often there are free educational resources on universities' websites. And this term, OER, open educational resources, is something that we see more and more of. So it's not just materials that you can Google or you can find on university websites, research papers, and so on. There are platforms like iTunes U, iTunes University, where you can find masses of lectures by very well-known figures. You can find Nobel Prize winners quite easily giving lectures. TED Talks, you can find some quite inspiring short 10, 20-minute talks about all kinds of topics. YouTube as well. We've used some of these in our international masters. So we've used TED Talks material where we had quite inspiring social entrepreneurs coming on and talking about what motivates them and what's their experiences. And so the possibility of open educational resources is a kind of free resource which can be used to complement existing provision, which is quite exciting in lots of ways. And if you go on iTunes, you'll see universities with a whole host of lectures by some of their star academics, which is free for people to use. You might ask, well, why are they giving this away free? But it also provides a window into what goes on in that university. So in a way, it's a two-way exchange. You get it free, but it's also a kind of advertising. So you get a window into what education might be like in that establishment. We also have platforms like EduFire, where anyone can sign up to become a tutor, and it can be free, but there is a commission system which they encourage the tutors and teachers to engage in. And things like the Khan Academy. There's an MIT course that I'm studying at the moment, a short course. It was free to do it. And in the blogs at various points in that course, people say, okay, so you're having difficulty with this economic concept of elasticity. Why don't you look at how the Khan Academy addresses that? And the Khan Academy is fairly straightforward, basic teaching about numeracy, literacy, science subjects, and so on. It's quite well done. It's quite straightforward use of diagrams and voiceover and so on and so forth. And this is a not-for-profit organization which was set up by, I think, an Indian-American guy in order to, partly because he was forever being asked by his relatives to help his nephews. And he said, well, I'm going to do this and put it online. So this whole open source field is generating a wealth of material which at the moment is free to use, and as I indicated, has the possibility of also being a window on our own provision. Then we come to learning analytics, and this is basically if you use Google to search for something, within an hour or so, you'll find a message coming into your box from your email box from somewhere like Amazon, suggesting some purchases that you might engage in. So it's using the web-based technologies and what it knows about the actions that you've engaged in on your computer to think about how you might be advised to improve your education. So in Moodle, for example, you can track the participation levels of different students. You can identify those that have not been very active for quite some time. You can draw up a profile of their activity over the whole of the course so far. The analytics offers the possibility for a more directed intervention from the teaching staff. And there are some people who really think that learning analytics and social learning analytics offer a very important pathway to enhancing the way in which conventional or distance learning teaching is undertaken. And then we have the corporate world getting bigger and bigger. So I've picked the example of SAGE because SAGE in its research methods is very highly developed. So 175,000 pages. You know, that's quite a few books. Also online forums, workshops, lecturing notes, and so on. So they've really entered into the world, not just of books, but the whole field of enhancing the possible support of teaching in research methods. And You know, you pick any one of the big publishing companies, and you'll see something similar. In terms of innovation, I was trying to think what might be the different types of innovation that I've covered in a Schumpeterian perspective. And I think it's we could think of distance learning as being a new kind of good or service. The process, new processes and methods of production. For example, in my university, we have a center periphery. We have the academics writing the courses in Milton Keynes. The courses last 4 or 5 years, and we have a network of part-time tutors in every region of the country and also in Europe that are the tutorial interface. We don't meet the students. They meet them, they give them online tutorials, or they give them face-to-face tutorials. So that's a kind of change of the process. We see the development of new markets, global markets that I've mentioned, new sources of supply, particularly this new online open educational resources which we can access and use. And this also has an impact on the industry, which I'll come on to in more detail when we talk about this thing called Moocs, massive open online courses. So I'm now going to focus more on the Open University and to look at what I think it's within that broad spectrum of innovative activity, what I think its contribution has been in terms of innovation in higher education. Firstly, some figures. Nearly 250,000 students, 7,000 tutors. Those are part-time tutors, some of whom will work for conventional universities and will work for us part-time. The 1,100 academic staff are based in Milton Keynes, and they work on one course, and they then work on another course, and they manage the presentation, so they manage the support of the tutors. Globalization, 16,000 students studied directly with the university overseas, and more than 37,000 on validated partnerships. Within Europe, we manage the population of European students directly from our UK offices. Outside Europe, we have partnerships. So we'll have a partnership in India, have a partnership in Thailand. They may not put on our full suite of courses, and there'll be some deals about there's a non-standard deal about the split of income from those courses. We have, as stated here, 15 curriculum partnerships in 23 countries, but we've also we've had some that have been not so successful. So the Open University Iran and the Open University Zimbabwe hit upon a few difficulties for obvious reasons. Then, in terms of number of modules, that's a module would be part of a course. CPD is continual professional development, and a lot of postgraduate courses as well. 15,000 students studying at postgraduate level. We have a huge number of downloads from iTunes U. That's the iTunes University download, and also YouTube EduS. We have the largest university channel. So we began in 1971 with 25,000 students. Our key innovations were, I think we have an Innovation, Knowledge and Development Center, an Institute of Educational Technology, which are focused on developing some new technologies. So for example, we developed something called Illuminate, which allows web-based tutorials to take place, and has the capabilities to have a joint blackboard that you're working on, or joint spreadsheet that people can work on, as well as seeing pictures of people participating. We're the largest partner in Moodle, the online platform which Roskilde uses. And it's an open source partnership, so all the partners contribute to developing the capabilities of that software. We are a leading open educational resource provider, which I'll show you in a minute. So what we've tended to do is that when a course finishes, we then put that up on a website, and we allow students to access that free. And as being distance learning material, it also has guidance on how people learn about that particular subject. So it has some self-assessment questions in it, and poses certain questions in text to give people some feedback on the extent to which they're learning and understanding the material. So that's a kind of access free. It might include some audiovisual material, and that's seen in two ways. Firstly, as a way in which people can get a window into our materials and see what it would be like to study as a distance learning student for the Open University. But it's also, the idea was that it also could be a platform for collaborative partnership in developing other suites of courses, for example, continuing professional development, and so on. But it's worked better in the first theme than in the second one. We've also, as perhaps a development of this OpenLearn website, and as a reaction to what we've seen happening in North America with the growth of Moocs. Moocs are massive open online courses, and there seems to be two consortia that are quite strong. One is edX, which is MIT and Harvard and some others, and the other is Coursera, which is Stanford and some West Coast universities. And they are offering short, free online courses. So I'm doing the one that I mentioned earlier. I'm doing it's an MIT course on poverty reduction, mainly in third world countries. And my university kind of thought this is really these developments are quite a threat to the distance learning world, which we are leading figures. And so it formed a consortium called Futurelearn, which includes about 20 of the top quarter universities in the UK, and with the aim of competing with these Moocs. People say, well, they may not all be massive. Some of them might be TOOCs, which is tiny open online courses, and some of them might be NOOCs, which is niche open online courses. So some of the claims are quite large. The largest course that we've had in normal course provision in my university is 12,000 students on one course, and we regularly get 1,000 students on our courses. The Mooc that I'm studying on poverty reduction, I think, has probably only got 300 or 400 students, but it's so that's it's not massive in that sense. So that's quite an interesting development. I'm going to say a little bit more about that in a few minutes. I think our production system has also been highly innovative, and our inclusion and education in terms of curriculum has also been innovative. So our production system is innovative in a number of respects. Firstly, I think this high-profile partnership with the BBC was very important in getting a high status, also attracting some quite good quality staff in the early years of the university. So we had some quite important figures who came, and we've got probably the Nobel Prize winner in geography in Doreen Massey, and we've had a number of other people with very high profiles. So that was important. It was also very important in establishing high quality products. So the BBC has very high standards of of production, almost to the extent that it's a barrier. Because when I talk to some Irish colleagues about how they do an online audiovisual material, they say, well, I just put my headset on, and I just talk, and then I upload it onto the online platform and so on. If I do something, I have to go to an audiovisual studio. The audiovisual expert will listen to it. They will then, I might have to do more than one take. If I fluff some lines, they can correct some hesitations, and so it's a very smoothly produced piece of audiovisual material. That can be a barrier in terms of cost. So we tend to be a higher cost provider, and that's why we go. In general, we think that if we have less than 200 students a year on undergraduate courses, then we should be doing something different. We must be doing something wrong, which is a strange way to operate. At master's level, we are more relaxed, but there's still pressure to have 100 students a year on master students. So that's one element, I think, of our production system. The other is, as I mentioned, this core periphery delivery system. So we have a central core which produces the educational materials, and then a network of part-time tutors. And the third thing, which I think has been very important in raising the quality of our materials, is this course team production system. So this is a sort of happy picture of a course team. Course teams can be quite unhappy places. You spend, hours, days, weeks sweating blood to do a draft of your course material. You then have a course team meeting just to discuss your draft of your written material. It's then people take it in turns to tear it to pieces in a constructive, helpful way, and you pick yourself up off the floor and then go and redraft it for a meeting a month later, and that might happen 2, 3, 4 times. So to get the comments of peers on your educational material, I think it has been a big part in raising the quality of our materials. And not only that, in the way in which the curriculum's designed, you collectively decide what is the curriculum. It's not a question of someone saying, well, I want to give a lecture series on this, and someone says, well, I'd like to do it on this. We try to develop a coherent curriculum which is discussed by the team until we agree that it's suitable and appropriate for the set of learning objectives we have for this course. And these people are a mix of academics. We would normally have a web designer on the team. We would have audiovisual people who would be involved with DVDs or clips of videos and audios. We would have designers, because we tend to have quite high quality design and print for materials that we send out, or even web-based materials. And the designers might also be involved with developing interactive web-based materials, so diagrams with voiceover, diagrams that move, that show the way in which the diagram is constructed, and so on. So a multidisciplinary team, which I think raises the quality of the concept of the course, the curriculum, and the materials that are delivered. We've also had a history of being inclusive. So the Open University is called Open because originally it was easier to get in if you had no qualifications than if you had qualifications. And originally people liked it so much we had to put a limit on how many courses they could study. So they would get their degree and then they would continue to study. So we had to say, wait a minute, we need to allow other people to come in. So we had to put a stop on things. So we had a lot of women in the early days. It was ideal for women returning to work, perhaps still with a young family, who are not fully into the workforce, might have been working part-time. We've also been very strong in providing ways for people with disabilities to access learning materials. And so, for example, I've spent hours doing an audio description of a diagram that I've used in text, and so that is available for people who've got visual impairment to understand part of the course. And we have accessibility criteria for our website, which are kind of international standards, and we have quite a high level of that. We also provide, apart from accessible study material, special equipment for different types of people with disability. And this open admissions policy is fantastic. When I said that I don't meet the students very often, but we have residential schools. We used to have what was called summer schools. When conventional universities were closed, we would hire their university campuses and have 1 week residential schools with our students. And it's fantastic when you see people who've come in with no qualifications. Obviously, they have to pass the exams. The exams have to be of appropriate university standard. But it's fantastic when you see people gaining in confidence, having thought that they were relegated to, you know, quite a lowly position in life, but through their education have grown in confidence and grown in the possibilities that working life can offer them. And so 40% of students have 1 A-level or lower. Normally, in our qualification system, at 18, you would need two A-levels to get into university. So that's really not a very high standard. But they have to get the right standard by the end. So a lot of tutorial support is put into the first years of study. People also overcome work and family barriers. So, you know, it may have been that originally women didn't have as many opportunities as men to study because of family pressures, family priorities, and so on. So that's why we've seen women coming into our university in greater numbers. Obviously, many of our students work full or part-time. And we've also more recently seen an attempt to democratize, think of different ways of engaging the ordinary citizens. So this is something called iSpot, is a website where people can spot. It's done by kind of the science, ecology, biology department, and it's where the students spot some creature or some plant which they haven't come across before, and they take a photograph of it, describe it, upload it on the website, and there's a dialogue, quite a lot of peer comment to identify it and comment on the habitat of where this was found, and so on and so forth. So that's a way of engaging ordinary people in this educational system. I was going to show you one of the courses to show how we use Moodle, but there's not so much time. This is another way in which we try to engage students. So we actually get students to look at Wikipedia and find an error in it or something that they think could be written better, and then to change that entry. Very revolutionary stuff. I'm now going to move into the kind of the Mooc era. This is OpenLearn. This is the material that we put on the website for people to use. Taking rather a long time to load up, but you can see that there will be parts of different courses there which people can dip into and see. You can watch a video there, for example. So that's OpenLearn, and we see perhaps this development of Moocs, massive open online courses, from our point of view as a development of this open part of our curriculum. So the Moocs are developing in a number of countries, and I'm going to briefly summarize what, in the kind of tradition of using open educational resources, this is a lecture put on by a guy called Martin Weller, who's a professor in education at the Open University. And it's a brief history of Moocs. I think one of the earlier ones was in Stanford on artificial intelligence. Had a huge number of people. These are some of the key figures. They tend to be quite short, 6, 8, 10 weeks, open to all, a mix of free technology, a lot of kind of enthusiasms of individuals who want to try to experiment in this field. They may not be accredited, but people talk about what's the business model. So it's clear that the selling of a credit at the end of it might be part of a business model. And also it seems that badges, digital badges, where you successfully completed a week or completed the whole course, have proved incredibly popular. And so, as with Second Life, you might be able to charge for badges. In Second Life, you charge for certain things. It also, it brings in a range of experts. So you wouldn't just use people from your own university. There's one course that Martin's involved with, which has multiple universities, multiple individuals from a number of different universities, each taking responsibility for a week's study. They're experimental. There's a high dropout rate. In fact, if you look at the people who are the initial students of Moocs, they're people like us. They're people already in the educational business who want to see, why on earth are people doing this? How do you do it? So in a way, it may not be, this current generation may not be typical if Moocs do last. There may be another generation of real students who come along which change the way it operates. But there's currently a high dropout rate, something like only 20% complete. But if you're only interested in how the model operates, that might explain it. They're popular, inspirational. So these are some of the big players. The Stanford Artificial Intelligence course, edX. They're free, but it says they're not entirely open. They do seem pretty open to me. They're fairly conventional generally in pedagogy. The one I'm doing at MIT has a MIT lecturer who lectures for 5 or 10 minutes. So we see her screen, we see her PowerPoints. There's a translation down the side, which is probably voice recognition, translation of her voice. And every 10 minutes we get a multiple choice question, and then some blogs for people discussing it. A lot of peer-to-peer support on the blogs, people helping each other out with problems and issues. And then another 10 minutes. And also some online reading material. That's an Open University course, an Open University Mooc. This is some of the technologies that are used in this Open University Mooc. 5 reasons to do a Mooc: to raise your profile, to experiment, to broaden the curriculum, network students, and because in some ways it's fun to be open, to use these open educational resources to bring them in and see how it operates. 5 reasons not to do a Mooc. Well, if it goes wrong, then you lose some of this advantage, because it reflects badly on you and the institution. And there can be, in the MIT one that I'm doing, there's a lot of very positive experience, but it's clear that it's a beta version in a way. So, there are certain things that don't work very well, and they initially gave a deadline for the handing in of assignments at the end of each week, not recognizing that, a deadline of a particular day is different depending on which part of the globe you come from. So they've now specified that it's 5 p.m. Eastern Summertime on Mondays. But that's a trivial example. There are lots of ways they haven't thought through some of the issues that different global studies will have. It can, some of the technologies, the compatibility issues with different technologies can be problematic. There's regular postings about difficulties people having downloading material, whether they've got fast enough Wi-Fi speeds and from the internet service providers and so on. I don't know how costly they are. And certainly MIT got a lot of money to put its materials online some years ago with Nicholas Negroponte getting several million to put MIT materials online. But it's also hard work, as this guy says. Now I want to come on to some of the finish up with a sort of provocative statement about what's the future of education with Moocs? And so this is some guy who argues that 4 different scenarios of how Moocs will change higher education. First of all, he says it's going to kill higher education. He said we could easily have 1 million students taking first years and send them to a Pearson test center and charge them $350 for the certificate of completion. These Moocs could run and run. They run on the MIT one. It runs on lectures that are already recorded, open educational resources, and multiple choice questionnaires that can be completed and completed. So that's one view. Second is the analytics. He says the hands-free, teacher-free university run entirely on analytics is probably not even 20 years away. I have a lot of concern about a system that can tell me what kind of student I am, what I should study based on the kind of responses I've given to previous questions, and tells my mum how I'm doing. That's the prospect of analytics. Corporate takeover. IBM, thinking about its future educational requirements, could develop Moocs, start people quite early, 16, 17, 18, on this pathway, and choose from the basis of a large number of people wanting to do an IBM course, which people it takes on, and in the process having not just a recruitment outcome but a educational outcome. And this idea of a community university, not in the sense of a local community, but of extended global community of people interested in the same subject as you are. Imagine being able to connect with 1,500 other people in the world currently thinking about this subject. Imagine not only being able to eventually find some of the content from some of the people who've ever chosen to write about the subject you're interested in, but leveraging to scale the possibilities of internet to actually access them all in real time. In my own university, we've traded on the fact that the BBC gives us a high status. So we've flown over to California to speak to experts on kind of earthquake recovery, or to Geneva to talk about splitting the atom and so on and so forth. So the potential, particularly with open educational resources, to draw in some of the experts at quite a low cost in a field and to build that community of interest is these four visions are quite provocative of what might happen to higher education. So, thank you very much.